Today's episode is going to help you uncover a way that you could see your compensation go up hundreds of dollars a month without having to go and ask for a raise. Welcome, new and returning Money Buddies. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming, and today we're talking about employer benefits. And there are a lot of great ones out there that you could take advantage of that you might not even be aware of right now. This can be a great way to feel like you're increasing your salary without having to go in and ask for a raise when you know your boss isn't going to give you one right now anyways. These benefits could be as simple as a better health insurance plan and actually understanding the real cost that your employer is paying for it, or it could extend all the way to things like pre-tax commuter benefits or other benefits you're not even aware of. I've even seen employers starting to offer pet insurance as an option to their employees. And of course, today's episode is going to get a mention of the 401k match, but you're going to love this one because it's going to help you see ways that your employer may be giving you a little bit more benefit than you realize and help you understand ways that you could get real benefit and real value from the money your company's paying for these benefits. And I know today's episode is a slight programming change from what I mentioned last week, but I really want to talk about this topic. Employer benefits can be something we often overlook or that we don't actually consider to have real value, but they can have real value and there may be benefits you're overlooking. So today you're going to leave this episode with some new ideas on the ways that you could get more benefit out of your workplace, including some ways that may even save you several hundreds of dollars a month or more. And today's case study is going to show you a real example of how you can get real economic benefit from your workplace benefits. And this is something I've recently been exploring a lot because my wife is getting ready to start a new job. And I think it's something that we all need to be aware of and something that we need to be ready to utilize because these benefits may have some very high value to you. You just might not be aware of them. And I've reviewed so many different company benefits for clients, and I'm excited to help you understand your options a little bit more today. So today's episode is going to give you a great glimpse into some ideas with your employer's benefits. And I have a whole checklist in my guide that helps young adults get started with financial planning. So go find that in the show notes or at fp4ya.com/guide. With that, let's get into today's episode. So I want to kick off our teaching today talking about why you should and how you need to make sure to maximize your workplace benefits. This first article here is titled, How Can Young People Maximize Their Workplace Benefits? Well, a couple quick things that I pulled from this article include prioritizing preventative options, consider the consequences of your invincibility mindset, and start taking advantage of your benefits sooner. And what I really want to make sure to say here is that you're actually using your benefits. Make sure that you're taking advantage of your health insurance now and use the preventative care stuff that they cover that doesn't cost anything to you. That way, further down the road, you can save even more money on insurance because you're able to stop any health issues very early instead of waiting until they get really bad. And it's also a great idea with that second option to avoid thinking you're invincible. I know as young adults, we can think that we have it all made and we're in the prime of our lives and that we're going to be just fine. But making sure that you take some preventative measures and actually use your benefits to take care of yourself is a great idea, both financially and physically and for your overall well-being. So make sure you're taking advantage of your benefits now. You'll often hear older people talk about their benefits a lot more. You likely have heard your parents talk about how health insurance and having good benefits is important for the jobs they choose and that maybe they've never left their job because it has such good benefits. And while I don't necessarily think you should stay at a job just because the benefits are great, it is certainly something to consider. These things are important, both for older people and they should be for us young adults. You need to make sure you're actually using your workplace benefits beyond just insurance. And you'll hear us talk about today some other benefits like, of course, retirement benefits, various pre-tax benefits, and all sorts of different things. But no matter what the benefit is, you need to make sure you're actually using them. Which leads me to my guide on my website. And there's a great list of benefits that you need to consider and some key areas to consider. Some of the main things to consider with your retirement benefits are making sure you understand your 401k match and know how to get it, and confirm with your HR department that you're actually getting it, and then check for a Roth option in your 401k. These steps are great and they come directly from the employer benefit checklist on my guide. You can find this guide at fp4ya.com/guide and then click on the investing tab at the top. There's a whole checklist that's going to walk you through your employer benefits and help you understand them properly. And I'm going to go through the health insurance benefits as well, but I want to make sure you're not overlooking retirement benefits. Make sure you understand that 401k match. Give a phone call or an email to your HR department and ask and make sure you're getting your full 401k match. It's a really good idea as well to have contributions going into a Roth 401k. If you're in that lower tax bracket, this is your first job, it's your very first 401k, and you're not making a whole lot of money yet, because that money has an extremely long time to grow tax-free. And the Roth option is great early in your career, so check and make sure that your 401k has that option. And then here's the real fun thing. If your work doesn't have a Roth 401k option, ask your HR department if you can get that option, because it may be something that they have thought about. And if they start hearing feedback from a lot of employees or some real pushback that people want that option, they may go ahead and figure out how to make it happen and turn on that option for you. Now, another important list of benefits to consider that are also listed on my guide include health insurance. The checklist for health insurance includes comparing all plans every year, check for HSA eligibility, and then enroll in your FSA or HSA options if they're available and they'll be beneficial to you. It's extremely important to compare your health insurance plans every single year, because you might be able to use a high deductible health plan one year because it's just you, or it's just you and a spouse, and then you can put a ton of money into your HSA that can grow tax-free for the future for future qualified medical expenses. But then the next year, say you're having a child, or you know you're going to be getting surgery and you know medical costs are coming, but you don't want that higher deductible anymore. That's a great time to review your health plans and consider switching to a more traditional plan, where your employer is paying more of the premium and your deductibles are a little bit lower. And that is why it's important to consider, because you may have a whole slew of options available to you that you need to consider. But if you're not reviewing them every single year, then you could be missing out. And it's a great idea to just review all of your insurance options during open enrollment, because that can be a good reminder to check in on things like auto insurance, renter's insurance, disability insurance, and all those other things. And then, of course, when you're talking about health insurance, you need to consider your HSA eligibility, or if you can use a FSA. Each of those options could be beneficial to you, so make sure you check with your HR to learn more about them, and then consider how can you use them in your financial plan. And then another thing that I found in my research for this episode that I wanted to make sure to tell all of you about is that your benefits cost more than you think. Did you know that employers are typically covering about 83% of individual plan premiums and about 73% of family plan premiums for health insurance? I wanted to include this because I think people underestimate the value of their workplace benefits. Your work will likely tell you on your pay stub how much of your health insurance premium they're paying, and it's important to consider that when you think about how much money you're making. And now, sure, health insurance options might not be exactly what you would have selected if you could have shopped on your own, but it's very likely that you're getting a policy that's much nicer than you would have thought to purchase because you didn't have a real sense of how much health insurance actually costs. And now it's a whole different side tangent of how expensive insurance is, and I'm not going to go down that road today in order to keep this episode under an hour or two. But make sure you're aware of how much your employer is actually paying for health insurance, and consider that when you're thinking about how much money you make. And then a couple more things to be aware of with your benefits from my guide. Life and disability insurance. These are things you need to check on with your employer. Understand what insurance options are free, review your coverage options, and know what type of disability insurance you have. And remember that the coverage disappears if you change jobs. You need to know what these policies consist of in case you ever have to use them. You don't want to be in a situation where you may have a life or disability insurance claim and you have to use those policies through work just to find out that they're extremely picky or finicky and it may not even cover what you actually need or the situation you're going through. These options are very likely free to you, and maybe there's some supplemental amounts you can buy for a little bit of money, but they very likely don't cover enough. And remember, that coverage is not going to follow you if you change jobs. So if your employer is providing the benefit, remember that it's going to go away if you change jobs. Because I know those of us young adults, we may not want to stay in one place for a super long time. So just be aware that your benefits will be lost and will change as you change jobs, especially when it comes to life and disability insurance, if you're relying on those options. And a real quick note from US Bank on long-term disability insurance: is employer coverage enough? It wants you to be aware of the limited income replacement options, are the benefits taxable, and fixed elimination periods. Not only will the disability insurance that your employer is providing not follow you, but even when you have the job, it might not be enough. I've mentioned this already, but you may need to buy extra. And just know, if your employer is paying for it, Will the benefit be taxable? How long do you have to wait before the benefit is even provided? You need to be aware of these things so that you know what is actually going to happen to your income if you were to get disabled. And it's very likely you're going to quickly find out that you need more disability insurance. So as I've mentioned on a previous episode, consider getting disability insurance on an individual policy or a professional organization that you might be a part of. It can be a cheaper way to get it by going through a group rate. So make sure you search different groups and such that you're a part of to see if you can get disability insurance that way. But just know your work provided coverage is likely not enough. So consider getting additional coverage. And then one last area from my guide that I want to talk about is these other benefits and student loan benefits. You need to make sure to consider things like dental and vision, employee assistance programs like financial coaching, legal services, and counseling, and make sure to update all beneficiaries on your employer-provided benefits. And also check for things like a commuter benefit like a transit pass or a van pool that may help you save money on getting to work. It's important to consider all of these things, and you're going to see in today's case study exactly why. It could save you a lot of money every single month. But of course, I do want to touch on one of the big things in all of our lives, and that's student loans. I found 2 articles that talk about employer-student repayment rules and Section 127. Both of these articles will be linked in the show notes if you want to read in more detail. But they say, quote, "The CARES Act expansion of IRC Section 127 is now permanent, allowing annual employer-provided tax-free amounts to continue to be used for student loan repayment and tuition assistance. Contributions are not counted as taxable income, keeping take-home pay intact. Employees get a faster path to debt freedom, and for many, it complements upcoming changes to repayment plans and helps bridge uncertainty during federal transitions." This Section 127 and student loan repayment options is 100% worth asking your employer if they can offer this benefit. And this benefit is one that we're going to touch on in today's case study, so you could see exactly how it could impact you and how it could affect your repayment situation. This is something that you do not want to ignore. If your employer offers any sort of other educational assistance, it may be easy for them to offer the student loan repayment assistance as well. Please ask. This is one you don't want to overlook. And I do want to round out today's research with an article about employee benefit preference by generation, and I want to hear some feedback from you listening. The top 5 things that I found were preferences for our generation include student loan repayment assistance, on-site childcare, tuition reimbursement, generous PTO, and flexible work hours and location. What benefits matter the most to you? I found on-site childcare to be one of the most interesting ones to me. I think this is something that's going to allow a lot more people to feel comfortable returning to work instead of making changes to raise a family. As work demands more from us, we're going to begin demanding more and more benefits that are like very beneficial, like on-site childcare or flexible work hours and flexible location. So what benefits do you want the most from your current job? Leave a comment on Spotify, YouTube, or send me an email. I would love to hear from you listening what benefit you want the most from your workplace. And now let's get into today's case study. Today's case study is a great one. It's going to cover your 401k, health insurance benefits, and some unconventional ones like a pre-tax transit benefit. So stay tuned because this could help you unlock hundreds or even thousands of dollars more per year without having to ask for a raise. So let's set up today's case study. We're going to be introducing Hailey Miller. She's 26, lives in Minneapolis. She makes about $62,000 a year. She graduated college 2 years ago, spent some time with an hourly retail job, but landed her current job about 8 months ago. It was a huge step up. And like most people, she was handed this packet that talked about benefits. She clicked through it, scrolled through it, threw the piece of paper away, enrolled in whatever as fast as possible, chose the options that were cheapest on her paycheck, right? And she never looked back. 8 months later, she feels okay, but she also feels stuck with some of the things she's having to pay for. She has about $28,000 in student loans, and she's put nothing into her 401k because she just keeps telling herself she'll start things later when it calms down and she's making more money. And she pays about $110 a month for a transit pass because she works and lives downtown. She figures her benefits package is pretty basic and she's never looked into it, but she's about to find out why that's not the right viewpoint to have. So let's get into this. The turning point for Hailey is that a coworker mentioned offhand just a real quick comment about how her student loan payment is being reimbursed through her work, and she'd never heard of this. That evening, she opened up that employer benefits package and she read through to find that her health insurance premiums, it's $148 a month out of her paycheck. But what she didn't know is that her employer is covering another $530 a month on her behalf. She had no idea her health insurance was actually $677 a month. And she had been ignoring this minor paycheck deduction when it's really an extremely beneficial and valuable benefit that was being provided that she had no idea about. And she also discovered a pre-tax transit benefit where she could set aside $325 a month for commuting before taxes, which meant that her $110 a month transit pass would really only cost close to $75 with the tax savings. So she had been paying her transit pass every single month with the full amount with after-tax money. Ignoring the tax benefit is costing her $400 a year for no reason. And then she found out on her 401k page that her employer has a pretty typical match at 3%. She had been contributing $0. That means for 8 months, she had left roughly a little over $1,000 on the table, just unclaimed, that she's never going to be able to get back. And then she discovered the educational assistance. Her company participates in the IRC Section 127 benefits, which means they can contribute up to $5,250 a year tax-free towards her student loan principal and interest. And she had no idea this even existed. And she immediately enrolled in their transit benefit that night. She set her 401k contribution to 3% to make sure to capture the full match. And she submitted the paperwork right away to start the student loan repayment benefit. So that's a fantastic couple of changes very quickly. It's going to save some very real money. So now Hailey starts to build a monthly routine where she checks her budget each month and she checks 3 things with her benefits. She makes sure that her transit funds were automatically loaded and that she's using those so she's not accidentally slipping back to paying it out of pocket with after-tax money. And she checks her 401k contribution to make sure the match is showing up. And once per quarter, she sends her loan documentation to HR so that they can continue to reimburse the payments and there's no gap there. She just has to stay on top of these things and keep checking in. And it's not hard to set reminders or set up a scheduled email to yourself or whatever it takes so that you can remember to check in on these things. And now at her next open enrollment, she actually compares all the different health insurance plan options instead of just defaulting to the one with the lowest premium. She ended up switching to a high deductible health plan, paired it with an HSA, and started putting $150 a month into her HSA, and she's treating it like a long-term account rather than just a medical fund. So there's a whole lot of wins here. There's a lot of things that Hailey got right, and a lot of ways she's saving a lot of money and setting herself up well for the future to have a whole lot more money. So by the end of the first full year actually using these benefits, she's starting to get $5,250 a year towards her student loans tax-free, which is cutting off about 2 years of her repayment plan. And her 401k is now over $3,700 from her contributions and the employer match. And that money is compounding from age 26, which is a massive benefit itself. And the transit pass that she can load with pre-tax money is saving her around $400 a year. And she also is now aware that her employer is paying over $6,000 a year towards her health insurance, which completely changes how she's thinking about what she's actually earning. She didn't get a raise. She didn't have to go change jobs. She just spent one evening actually reviewing her benefits and making some changes. Now, the key insight for me here is that this situation is common. It's likely that you're in your first salary role or you're in your first job that's getting you some actual benefits, and you do just like Hailey did in the case study where it's just check the cheapest options or ignore it because it seems overwhelming. The deadline is immediate. You have to do all these things right away, and whatever looks cheapest feels like a win. But you need to go back and review your benefits so that you can figure out what you can take advantage of and start saving some more money or start actually utilizing your benefits. Most people never do this, but now that you've listened to today's episode, you know how beneficial these benefits can be. So go and check them out. I hope you enjoyed today's case study and today's research. That does it for today's episode. So we're going to wrap it all up next, and I have a great action item for each of you listening. The one action item for you to do this week is to log into your benefits portal and write down one benefit that you did not know you had and start using it. And be sure to share today's episode with a coworker so that you can all start to take advantage of your work benefits together. That way you can all start utilizing your commuter benefits that you weren't aware of. Take advantage of your 401k match and save and use your health insurance. So be sure to share today's episode with a coworker or a friend so that you can all take advantage of these benefits that you didn't even know you had. And for that checklist on workplace benefits and my full guide for helping young adults get started with financial planning, check it out in the show notes or at fp4ya.com/guide. Now, next week's episode is going to be about the age-old question that I've heard countless of times. Which retirement account do I invest in? Do I do a 401k or a Roth IRA? Next week, we're talking about retirement accounts and Roth versus traditional. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Financial Planning for Young Adults. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming. Have a great week. And hey, quick heads up. This podcast, it's meant to be educational and it's for entertainment purposes. It's not personalized financial advice for your specific situation. So before you go out and make any big money moves, make sure you chat with a qualified financial professional who knows your full financial picture.